Hi, everyone. So if you've watched my recent videos, I was getting bushy. You can tell how busy my life is, how hectic my days are, by how disheveled I become. But I had crossed that like critical threshold where it was time to reshuffle myself. So I went to that bathroom and I shaved. And then I was like, whenever you're in the bath, even if you're in the shower or whatever, you're uninterruptible. This is the perfect time to just think and not have distractions. And so I was doing that. And my thoughts began with shaving, because that's what I was doing. I was looking in the mirror and shaving. And I thought that if you pronounce it shive, like I shive my face, like with a riser blade. If you just swap the A's with I's, you're halfway to an Australian accent. And then my thought train took me, the next station was I've only known in real life, two Australian people, and they're both like amazing. It's like unfair how bright and skilled they are. One was a former professor when I was an undergrad, and the other is a former student, a former grad student, Peter and Liam, respectively. And it's like they're a different species, how impressive they are. And that gives me this biased appreciation. My limited sample of Australian acquaintances biases my value for the Australian accent. It's like if you really like Mario games, you grew up with Mario games, or something, you love Zelda games, you're probably biased to find emotion and sentimentality in the music of those worlds. And accents are essentially the same thing. It's the music and the timbre of the Mushroom Kingdom and Hyrule and Australia. And then I thought that, Marie and I will often watch fantasy TV shows. We watch a bunch of these. We'll watch fantasy movies. We watch a bunch of these. I've probably listened to 100, fantasy-themed audiobooks, and not one of them, of any of those things that I've ever encountered, has an Australian accent in it. It's always an English accent. And if I bring this point up to people, like, yeah, it's written in the English language. That's what I should be talking. No. Like the British accent. Oh, okay. Why didn't you say that? If you say British accent, everyone in the world understands. But if you say it in front of an Englishman, it's like 100% of the time. I've done this a number of times, and exactly every instance among that number, they have called it a stupid American expression. Because Britain is 4 countries. You could be talking about a Scottish accent. But nobody in the world thinks that. Nobody thinks that if I say British accent, I'm referring to Wales or whatever. In the same way that, let's say, there's like a 40-year-old guy from Liverpool or whatever, and he says, maybe it's about the word soccer or British accent or something. That's a stupid Americanism, or that's a stupid American expression. Nobody thinks, despite America being 2 continents, that he's referring to Paraguay, or like Bolivia or something. And so in the same way that I have this biased appreciation for the Australian accent, I have this slight bias about the English accent, the British accent, that it contains pomposity. There's just pomposity inherent to the pronunciation in a way that the Australians don't. At least in my tiny, possibly non-representative sample of Australians, there is no pomposity in it. And I guess I would include in that sample, it's like Crocodile Dundee, or like the real life, like the non-fiction equivalent, Steve Irwin. But neither of them was, pompous. And so I just don't feel like that tone, right? That voice of superiority is fit, that it's appropriate for like a medieval fantasy protagonist. Almost none of them. I'm about to sneeze. I can't think of any that are like smug. Sorry if that was super loud. Anyway, I can think of exactly 0 like fantasy protagonists who are like smug princes talking down to their subjects. They're usually farm boys, like Wesley. And those farm boys are often in a position of opposition to the smug royalty. Again, like Wesley. So why does like every single story, all these old, why do they all have this accent? Because it's not like, because this is the story about olden times, and that's the accent of olden folk. This is King Arthur's. Nope, no, that's not true. There are extensive even like Bill Bryson in mother tongue. I mean, he wrote about this, about the history of when that non-rhotic switch was that, like the dropping of the R's, so you can no longer tell the difference between like mark and mock, no ability to tell what word is being used. It's not like Shakespeare talked in this way, because he was writing well before the American Revolution, which is when a lot of these pronunciation changes were sort of getting their traction in the British accent. Or like Robin Hood.
I've come to warn you that if you do not stop levying these evil taxes, I shall lead the good people of England in a revolt against you.
And why should the people listen to you?
Because, unlike some other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent.
So again, love me some Cary Elwes. I mean, I grew up with Princess Bride. This is the greatest movie of all time. Here's my VHS, there's my DVD, and Cary Elwes is the face of Wesley, and it could not possibly be changed. I mean, if you were to replace that with some other face, it would necessarily diminish the emotional connection with me. I mean, that's Cary Elwes, but he's also the face of Robin Hood, right? There's my original VHS I used to watch all the time as a little younger me, and my DVD of it. The problem with Robin Hood, though, as like a historical figure, is it's probably folklore that's just a composite, like a collection of maybe morally minded criminals, a bunch of thieves, from the 13th century, and nobody was speaking back then with an English accent. And King Arthur, I mean, this is folklore about the 5th and 6th centuries, right? This is like a Celtic language. Or if you live in Boston, it's a Celtic language. But the idea that an English accent has anything to do with like historical contexts, or like linguistic accuracy in these sorts of settings, that's as fantastical as dragons, which are just as common in fantasy media, fantasy literature and shows and movies and whatever. And I feel like these cliches are kind of weakening the genre a little bit. And so maybe we could swap out some of the dragons for like huge rhinos or something, and change the bestiary a little bit. And maybe we could swap out, as much as I hate to say it, Cary Elwes for like a Peter or a Liam or like a Crocodile Dundee. And that might improve the temperament of the character, maybe something like that. And then help me with immersion in the world, like the Mushroom Kingdom, like Hyrule. And then that's where my thoughts ended, because I finished shaving and it was time to get on with my day. But as you get on with your day, I hope this is just my opinion and yours totally differs, and you love the English accent and it's necessary for you to find immersion, because that way there's like infinity options for you to immerse yourself in. So that's what I hope. All right, I'll see you next time.